So today we'll be crafting a poem using Youth Speaks I Live Here one-on-one workshop. The golden rules for this workshop, the rules to, govern yourself by are that there are no wrong answers and that the standard is yourself. So essentially, you are not comparing yourself to Maya Angelou. You are not saying, would Maya Angelou write this poem? You are saying, would I write this poem? So to get started, we're going to begin with a short check-in of name, gender pronouns, where you are at and how you are feeling, what is one place you are at today, and no repeats. So basically we go once and we try not to repeat the information that we've said. Yeah, so my name is Jen Tribbet. My gender pronouns are any pronouns you feel comfortable calling me. I'm comfortable using them all. I'm at my bedroom because it is the cleanest and most presentable room in my house to do remote workshops from. I'm feeling well rested. One place I was at today was my dreams. Would anybody like to go next? We could always do popcorn style. We've got hopefully 10 to 15 minutes to do the check-in before getting into the actual meat and potatoes of the workshop, or the veggies and potatoes if you are vegan.
I can go next. My name is Elise Gaynor. My gender pronouns are she, her. I'm currently in my workspace at home in Redwood City. I'm actually feeling a little sleepy since I haven't been getting the best quality sleep lately. And I was at my kitchen today. I was getting snacks right before this and doing some cooking this morning. And maybe I'll popcorn it over to Emer and let me know if that's the right pronunciation. Okay, I'm not sure if Emer can. So maybe I'll popcorn it to Lisa.
Hey, my name is Lisa Jobson, pronouns she, her. I am at my kitchen table in the same very uncomfortable chair I've never bothered to swap out in all the time I've been working from home. I'm not sure why, but I'm back at it. I'm feeling pretty good. Been outside most of the day, and one place I was at today before this was the dog park, and there were no other dogs there, but my dog watched squirrels for a long time, so she was happy.
Awesome. Well, if there's no one else who wants to introduce themselves for the check-in, we can get into beginning to make our word bank, which we will be using for our prompts that are later to come in the workshop. So for our word bank, we're going to take approximately 10 minutes, 7 to 10 minutes for each word that we have. So there's going to be an overarching word. They are live, here, and I. And as I put these words up onto the screen, I will go a little into what I mean by each word in terms of what we're going to be using them for in the prompts. So what does it mean to live? So if you could take 7 minutes to, on a piece of paper, on your notes app, wherever you are using to facilitate your thoughts in this workshop, take a moment to write down some words of what it means for you to live. Some examples, maybe living to you is the neurons in your brain. Maybe it's the blood pumping through your veins. To live can mean a lot of different things to different people. It can mean to be fulfilled. But take a few moments to write some words of what it means for you to live. I'm gonna be putting 7 minutes. And if you feel like maybe you don't need that much time, maybe we could raise our hands. But yeah, I'm gonna put 7 minutes starting now. That was not the alarm, that was me changing my alarm noise. And we're coming to a close on the live section of our word bank. How was that for everybody? Does anybody want to check in? Maybe share some of the words you put in your live word bank so that as we go to our next word bank, which is here, maybe we'll have like a feel of how that went for the first 5 minutes. I know I said 7. I decided that we were going to try and condense this to make sure that everybody got to say some words on their words.
I thought it was pretty good. Some of my words were both like the base level of just being alive, like breathing and sensing, but then I was also thinking about like daily life. So I started writing things like having, daily rhythms, but also growth and change, and like feeling connected. So it was nice to think about it from kind of that base level, but then also more like elaborate more on the essence of living well, I guess.
Nice. Anybody else want to go before we move to our next word? And I'll be giving everybody 5 minutes for that one as well. Anybody want to hear my perspective? I don't want to take up too much space as a facilitator, but I'm happy to share if you would like me to. Cool. I'm going to go to the next word in the sake of time, which is here. If someone asked you, where do you live? What would you say? Um, and there is probably a relation here between how and where you live. So after you get your free words down, think about things like how does where you live change how you live? An example, like if I live in a city where there's bustling transportation, that's probably going to be different than like if I were to say that I live in like a rural isolated town. So like I'm going places more because I live in Oakland than like if I live in Atlanta where there's like lots of urban sprawl, which is my truth. I live in Oakland largely because I like to go places and do not like traffic. So where we live changes how we live. So that's something to be considering when we're writing our here. I'm gonna put 5 minutes on the clock and we're gonna get started with our brainstorm. Another mid word bank note for this one. One thing that I'm doing for the here section is literally looking around me, like what is near you? I have a fur coat that should be on a hanger, and I put that in my word bank because that's here, that's where I am. Sometimes here is a relational spatial thing. We're coming up on the last 30 seconds of this word for the word bank. And we're there. Let's reflect on what it was like to put down words in the here section. I would love to hear from someone. What came up for you? Were they like very physical spaces? Were they states of being? Yeah. I'm also happy to reflect on my here section as well. Cool. I think I'm actually going to take the lead on this one and just go through very quickly some words in my word bank. I want to say also that if you hear something in someone else's word bank and you say, that applies to me too, I am in that space, I live there, I am there, I identify as that, feel free to write it in your own word bank. So for my here section, I have Oakland, a political landscape, a blue state question mark, because politics is weird. California, a reasonably temperate space, a decently accessible space, a 1-bedroom apartment in a mess, in my head, in my body, among dishes that need to be not only washed but put away, among clothes that need to be not only washed but put away, in time, in my busy schedule, by the dog toys, next to a fur coat that should be on a hanger, in a dwelling with a freshly cleaned shower and toilet, in a space that looks like the physical manifestation of mental illness. So you see, I got like really metaphysical there. I got like really literal there. You can take the here in so many different directions, and that's part of why I love this particular word bank. Um, and I feel like also when you're doing these things, like if you're like, oh, I do live in a mess, like you saw that I also put like in a dwelling with a freshly clean toilet and shower, like let's not be too hard on ourselves. Like you can go in on yourself and be like, I am not where I need to be, but also like if you do find yourself doing that, like maybe it's good to step back and say like, I am doing some things like well. So yeah, I definitely felt like, ooh, this here section is really a self drag on myself. But I am doing some things right. So for our next section, we're going to do the I section, which is who are you? And let's try not to repeat from the live and the here section if possible, but who are you? How do you identify? What are the categories you fit into, the groups that represent the communities that you claim? And we're gonna do one good 5-minute session for this word bank as well, followed by yet another share out. I would love to hear from new people, but if we have the same people who are holding it down, then the same people are holding it down. And the time is starting now. One thing for the I section that I like to do is to put the parts of myself that I also feel are at odd with myself. For example, I am lactose intolerant. I am a cheese lover. Yeah, so do with that with what you will. And with that, we're at time for our I word bank. Yeah, so hope you are reflecting on what are the ways, I probably should have put that part of the slide up. But what are the ways you identify the categories you fit into, the groups or communities you claim? Anyone have any particularly poignant reflections happening here? Anything you may want to share with the group? Yeah.
I thought about myself from different angles of like roles I play, from the values I have that make who I am, and then also how I show up physically in the world. And yeah, so I didn't really put them into categories, but when I look at my list, I see that because I wrote things like I'm an auntie and a sister and a friend, but also, you know, I'm a social introvert, and you know, I'm a grounded idealist. So kind of seeing those different ways that identity shows up in roles and values. And I forgot the third one I said, but how it shows up all together in the list.
Awesome. Yeah, for me, I was once again, I was like, I can be very hard on myself. So it was
Hello.
trying to balance being hard on myself and being like, what are the values that also make me hard on
Person.
myself? Oh, hi, John.
Hi.
Oh, John, you were here and now it seems like you aren't here. Is John still in the room?
No, I think John dropped out. I think there was some trouble getting connected with the audio. So we'll just continue and see if John comes back.
Okay. Yeah. But you know, qualities about myself, a dreamer, alive, things that are like the things I continually say as my identity. I know I said no repeats, but I think that Black and Blackity Black are very different. Queer, things like that. And yeah, so we're going to use these word banks in our next activity, which is a writing prompt. And we have 2 writing prompts in case the next writing prompt is not going to eat up all of our time, which I don't think it will. But I think I'd like to give you the option of which writing prompt you would like to tackle first. So for our first writing prompt, we have, okay, so the first writing prompt, it looks like I actually have that as like not optional. And the second two, there's like a 2 and 3, which are optional. So we'll choose an optional prompt after we tackle this first prompt, which I feel is a little more accessible. So for our first writing prompt, yes, we're going to write about a moment or moments where you truly felt deeply alive. The challenge here is to try and ground this moment in a specific location from the here column.
Hello. What are we learning about? Sorry, I'm dyslexic.
Hi, Irvin.
Hi.
So
what are we learning about today?
We're doing like a poem workshop where we use a framework where we recently just created a word bank. We took 5 minutes to write down about where we live as
Like what
well.
states, right?
Yeah, that may be true for some of us. But like, what does it? Okay, it looks like Irvin also is having potentially connectivity issues.
Hello.
Cool. Well, should we continue with the writing prompts?
Yeah, let's keep going.
um, so we're going to write about a moment or moments where you felt truly deeply alive. The challenge is to try and ground this moment in a specific location from your here column. Once again, from the word banks we just spent some time creating. For example, one way this could look is by creating a phrase using one word from each column, i.e., Black dances, Bart like turf fiends, twisting shoulders out of sockets into freedom. Boy breathes Berkeley, which is a place. Typically not breathing places, so get metaphorical, allegorical, whatever you want to do. And it smells like the intersection of college and poverty. Runs on the corner of 16th and Mission from a city that threatens to push her to the suburbs. And so there's a ghost line here, which is I could never forget. So if you're like, oh, I don't know how to start my poem, ghost lines are really helpful. They're usually like a prompt or a line that is given to facilitate you beginning your writing process. So if you want to start your poem with I could never forget, you can. I am not limiting you to starting your poem with I could never forget, but I want to offer you a place to start so that if you are like, oh, like I don't know how to even start this, I maybe you've never done a poem before. You could always start with I could never forget. So let me pull up. I accidentally brought one tab into a separate window and it is now frustrating me. But maybe I say, I could never forget neurons firing in my brain, a political landscape, multiple things at once. See how I just like use literally a word or a like phrase from each of my word banks after the ghost line, and it like kind of made sense. Like that's the premise here. We're going to be connecting them. You can also use words that are not in your words bank. So if you're like, huh, this doesn't make sense, I want to add some words to like make it make sense, you can do that. But I'm gonna put 7 minutes on the clock right now, and hopefully that'll give us some time to put something together, have a share out, maybe even do a second prompt. We'll see how things are going as they go, but 7 minutes is on the clock starting now.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Uh-uh. Okay.
See how we're doing on time. We're in our last minute of the first writing prompt. Cool. Does anybody want to go first to share their poem? Would anybody like to hear my poem as an example first? How are we feeling? Can I get a temperature check?
I can share about my poem. I'm not sure if I want to share it. I feel like there are things I would want to maybe work on, but I'm
Yeah.
curious to hear yours. I ended up, oh, go ahead.
One thing I often find about writing prompt exercises is sometimes I'm like, oh, I like pieces and elements of this. And I feel like that's where the exercise comes in, is like, you are not necessarily always going to be like, oh, I love this piece. I love the way it ended. Sometimes you're like, ooh, I was on a roll here. And then what happened? And so trying to be like, oh, this is a writing exercise. It doesn't need to be perfect. I don't think I'm always going to get to a place where I'm like, oh, I like this poem. That's totally normal. And I just wanted to validate that. And I'm also sorry for interrupting you, but I just wanted to get that in there.
No, thanks for, that's important. Thanks for making that point. Yeah, I was gonna say that my poem, basically, I kind of started with the idea of daily rhythms, and like walking around my neighborhood is something that I do a lot. And there are a lot of hills in the neighborhood. And so that's basically what my poem is about, just those walks and catching the coastal breeze and the bay views from the hilltops. And then the part that was challenging was, and maybe it's probably just because I need to like expand the concept, but better integrating this like sense of identity into this poem that's very much more focused on the like external experience of taking these walks.
Yeah, nice. Dang, I was really hoping to hear from Emerk. Hey, Emerk. We never really got an introduction, but they came in and out. They came on the mic for a few seconds. I was like, oh, somebody who's been in the workshop the whole time is about to spit. I will demonstrate my writing exercise prompt. And once again, like I said, not always satisfied with how these things end. Sometimes very like, ooh, that beginning, that spoke to me, but the ending, I'm like, ugh. Sometimes it's hard to land the plane. Sometimes you get in the air and it's hard to land the plane. Wow, that sounds so poetic. Here we go. So for my I Live Here poem, I did use the ghost line. So we have, I could never forget, neurons firing in my brain, a political landscape, multiple things all at once. Aren't I lucky to be Black and queer in a blue state? Aren't I lucky to be blackity black, gender nonconforming, and mentally ill in a mess? One bedroom apartment, eating regularly, drinking enough water not to be dehydrated, painfully empathetic, taking deep breaths. In my head, being perceived and outgrowing all my favorite clothes. Gaining weight all the time. Lonely. Low income for my zip code. Never late on rent and always anti-capitalist. So I'm lactose intolerant and a cheese lover in a space that looks like the physical manifestation of mental illness. At least I'm in a dwelling with a freshly clean shower and toilet. Never satisfied, always wanting more, and very grateful. Ooh, so you see how it was like, oh, there's a lot of chaos here, but it was like also a complete thought. Like you can string together like the states of being that you're in, the metaphysical concepts that you're like wrestling with into something that can be beautiful, that can be like conceptualized into thoughts that like kind of make sense to other people, or at least make sense to you. So yeah, does anybody feel like potentially tackling another prompt, as we have approximately 12 more minutes? Yeah, cool. Oh, I should have shared that this slide, the share out, but you know, we're going off of multiple computers here, multiple phones. So for our next individual practice, we have options. We can do this one, which is to bring your world to life by writing about the places in the here column as if they could do the things in the live column. Example, how does your neighborhood breathe? How does the light, or how does the light heavy? Is it healthy or out of breath? If your grandma's house learns, what does it learn? Who teaches it? What lessons does it learn in every day? The alternative writing prompt is to write about the things in the here column that keep you from doing the things in the live column. I would blank, but if ... For example, I would dance, but Bart criminalizes us for playing our music too loud. I would smile at my neighbors, but we are in a pandemic, so I wear my mask. Woo! Ooh, who wrote that? That was so true. Does anybody have a preference for which prompts to tackle? Cool. I'm really feeling the writing about things in the here column as if they could do the things in the live column. So let's take 7 minutes and we'll get into it. 7 minutes are on the clock. I also want to say that if you start with a ghost line and you're like, I don't like it, you can start with another ghost line, start with something else, happens all the time. Yeah. Also want to say that if anything you've written inspires you to go a completely, entirely different direction, feel free to. About 30 seconds left. Cool. Anyone come up with anything that they enjoyed? Yeah, we may not be sharing our whole pieces unless we want to, but if there's anything that you wrote that you were like, ooh, that spoke to me, like I wasn't expecting to hear that and have it speak to me, what was it? How are we feeling about this prompt and what we've created?
I feel pretty good. I think this prompt, well, actually, it's a really nice day today. So I think my mind is just at how beautiful it is. And being in Redwood City, the weather is pretty consistently nice. And so the thing that sunk in for me is being from the East Coast with more variety in weather and how good it feels to be in a place where it's consistently nice. So my poem kind of pointed to that, and almost like this like Californiization. I just made that word up, but that happens from East Coast people who move to the West.
I feel it. One of my words in my word bank was like, I live in a reasonably temperate place. Like, can I say that it is warm in the Bay? Not necessarily. Like, can I say it's reasonably temperate? Absolutely. Yeah, I feel like the ghost line led me into like a realization, which is every day I learn to take deep breaths, but I forget because my mess is eating regularly. And it's like I'm constantly feeding like this thing that causes me anxiety and I kind of need to intervene. And so like my piece that I wrote was about that. And I feel like, you know, your word bank can be harsh on you. It's like when the ghost line and the word bank team up, they can be kind of like a little bleak. And so there's potential that like the I would, but if no, that sounds like the word bank and the ghost line would have beat me up as well. But yeah, writing is a reflection of our lives, and I feel like these writing exercises, especially about like life and living and the places we're at, can be deeply reflective. Um, I'm going to check my notes for closing out, but yes, and the tab is refreshing. I've got my notes on facilitating for some reason in a tab that relies on the internet, because I plan that well. Yeah, okay, it looks like actually the share out was our last thing. So I really hope that you enjoyed the workshop. We are right on time at 1 hour. So I hope that everybody enjoyed a time conscious activity. Would love to hear some feedback if you have any in this moment. I'm just grateful to be here. And yeah, I enjoyed some of what I came up with. And I hope you enjoyed the same and that maybe this is a tool you'll revisit in the future.
Thank you so much, Jen. I had a great time.
Thank you. And thank you for everyone who's tuning in virtually. I hope that you're able to create something that you enjoy as well.